Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It is delightful to see you all. Welcome to Women Together Connect. I'm Amy Hall. I am the Social Consciousness Strategic Advisor for Eileen Fisher, Inc. and the Sustainability Strategic Advisor for Eileen Fisher Foundation. I'm guest hosting today. You may have noticed I'm not Antoinette. She is covering at the last minute for another colleague who is ill and who needed her attendance at an important meeting. So I'm so glad to be here with you today and with our special guest who will be introduced shortly. I see some of you have started to enter your information in the chat, but as we are getting started, please feel free to share a little hello in the chat or in the YouTube comments if you're joining through YouTube. Share your location, a little bit about your weather. Want to see what's going on and where we all are coming from in the world. I see we have people from all over the place. We've got Cindy from San Antonio and Nancy from Woodcliff Lake, New Jersey. We've got Beth from Tampa Bay, Kitu from Litchfield. Oh my gosh, Marlene from rainy, cool Chicago. I'm so sorry to hear that. Thank you all for joining. And while you continue to throw your name in, I'm going to take us through a very brief moment of stillness. Those of you who are familiar with Women Together, this is a practice that we do inside Eileen Fisher. We've been doing it for a couple of decades now. I've been with the company for 30 years, and it really feels like a very important component of our days now. So I'd love for you, if you're able to kind of position yourself at the end of your chair, whatever you're sitting on, or if you're on the floor, just connect your butt to the floor through your chair, feet flat on the floor, kind of raise your body up, feel a little string pulling your head to the sky. Take a couple of deep breaths. If you want to roll your shoulders back, I love to do that. And I'll just sit here in stillness with you and bring us back in about 60 seconds. All right, welcome back, everybody. And I see we have many more visitors from all over the world here. I'd love to introduce, oh, sorry, one more thing I want to do before I introduce our special guest. Love to find out what brought you here to Women Together today. If you wouldn't mind throwing that in the chat. I was brought here because I'm a poor substitute for my esteemed colleague, Antoinette. But perhaps others have more compelling reasons. Community, wonderful. Somebody's excited to hear from you, Ellen. Love that. Women Together is always a source of incredible inspiration and wonderful way to start or get through your day. And I see that coming through the chat comments. Connection with authentic women. Beautiful. So, women and community. You may have noticed that today's Women Together is a little bit different than the usual for a number of reasons. Myself being your host is one, but the other one is that we are introducing our very special guest and friend, Ellen Cassedy, to you. Ellen is really taking more of an activist stance in today's presentation, which I think is entirely appropriate. It is the 50th anniversary of the movement Ellen started, along with the 50th anniversary of Ms. Magazine. And I think that this is a very, very important moment indeed. And we're truly honored to have Ellen with us. A fun fact is that I met Ellen a few months ago. Something I do when I'm not working at Eileen Fisher is I own and run an independent bookstore here in Ossining, New York. And I had invited Ellen to be a guest of mine because she had just published her lovely, amazing book, Working 9 to 5. And I had asked Antoinette to moderate that panel. So, so that is how Ellen and Antoinette actually met and how Ellen became invited to this event. So we're really excited to have a 2-for-1 now in this moment, and to bring Ellen to share her with the rest of you, with all of you today. Ellen, for those of you who are not aware, was a founder and longtime leader of 9 to 5, which is a movement of working women that began in Boston 50 years ago. 9 to 5 also inspired something you may have heard of, the hit Hollywood film, and Dolly Parton's anthem, for lack of another word. And it changed the culture of the modern office, specifically, especially for women. Her new book, Working 9 to 5, A Women's Movement, a Labor Union, and the Iconic Movie, has been out for a couple of months now. She will share more about it. Ellen was a columnist for the Philadelphia Daily News, a speechwriter for the Clinton administration, and she's the award-winning author of several books, and she lives in New York City. So let me see if what's going on in the chat here. We have some links that will be shared in the chat. If in case you're interested in buying the book or looking into it at all, there is a discount code also for you. So Ellen is going to share with us today. She's going to give us a peek inside the important movement that she started. She's going to talk about how she was changed by it and give us a feel for what's coming down the pike in the future. And so, Ellen, do you want to take it away here?
Yes, thank you so much, Amy. It's wonderful to see you again. And it's great to be here with everybody. Really an honor to have the opportunity to talk about the 9 to 5 movement. I was so fortunate to be part of this group of determined women workers who got together back in the 1970s and ended up inspiring a Hollywood hit movie and starting a woman-led union and really transforming the modern office. I'm going to share the screen and show you some photos. So let me do that now. Come on. Okay, slideshow from the beginning. Whoops. Okay, 50 years ago, on a cold December morning, I was one of 10 women office workers who fanned out across the city of Boston to pass out the first issue of the 9 to 5 newsletter. And the front page said this: "We keep Boston's businesses and institutions running smoothly. Without us, they would grind to a halt. Yet we are underpaid and undervalued." And that's how my book, Working 9 to 5, begins, with the 10 of us shivering on street corners. The idea for the book came to me the day after Donald Trump was sworn in as president, when hundreds of thousands of women gathered in Washington, D.C. and packed the streets so tight they could barely move. Across the country, it's estimated that 4 million people participated in the Women's March that day. It was among the largest demonstrations in US history. And many of those women had never participated in a demonstration ever before, but they had to be there. And those women reminded me of the women of 9 to 5 who had joined together in the 1970s to win a better life on the job. And I thought, I have something to say to these women. And I wanted to write the kind of book that I was hungry for when I was starting out as an organizer, a book that conveyed what it was like to work in a tiny beehive of an office for 12 hours a day, full of dreams and passion and energy, what it was like to see women joining together, growing together, winning together. But I also wanted to convey the hard parts, my doubts, how sometimes I wanted to throw in the towel. I was 22 years old, that's me on the left, working as a clerk typist at Harvard University, my first job out of college. And a group of us started sitting around in a circle on our lunch hour, just as we're doing here, and talking about our jobs, low pay, unequal pay, training men to be our supervisors, having to do favors, all kinds of favors for our bosses, the lack of respect. As one woman put it, they call us girls until the day we retire without pension. And I think it all hit home for us one day when a student walked into the office of Harvard one day, looked one of us straight in the eye and said, "Isn't anybody here?" "Well, I'm here. Can't you see me?" At that time, when people thought worker, they tended to picture a man in a hard hat wielding a wrench. Women workers, especially office workers, were virtually invisible. But in the 1970s, millions of women were pouring into the workforce, and 1 in 3 was an office worker. And as the clerical workforce grew by leaps and bounds, so did a sense of injustice among the women whose job it was to photocopy and type and mimeograph and take dictation and staple. We wanted our rights and we wanted respect. Our goal was not just to get women out of the typing pool, but to make the typing pool a better place to work. As Elise Bryant, the director of the Coalition of Labor Union Women, says, there are no menial jobs, just menial pay. We were keenly aware of the chain of working women's activism that stretched back to the garment women of the turn of the 20th century, who went on strike by the tens of thousands and galvanized the labor movement of their day. The brave women who supported the sit-down strikers in the auto and steel industries of the 1930s and 40s, and on up through the civil rights marchers of the 50s and 60s, and the pioneers of the women's liberation movement, whose ideas had seeped into every corner of American society. Maybe we thought, maybe now it was our turn. Maybe we could change the modern office, change the labor movement, change the world. We thought big. But women who worked in offices were scared to take action, and rightfully so. In the downtown office workforce, there was little or no history of collective action. When you had a problem, you were likely to think of it as your individual personal problem. Maybe you should dress better or take a class. For most office workers, the idea of sitting across the table with management and negotiating over wages and working conditions was virtually unimaginable. Many people thought they'd do better just trying to make things better on their own. But our goal was to give women the tools to join together to make change. But how are we going to get off the ground? Well, we started small. We started with lunch. We called up all the women who wrote to us in response to the newsletter and invited them to meet us in a little diner downtown, one by one. Sometimes I ate 3 lunches in one day. And that's how I learned a very important principle of organizing, which is never bring an artichoke to a recruitment lunch. The heart of every lunch was listening to what people were concerned about, the words they used. Many women told us in no uncertain terms that they did not consider themselves feminists. So, okay, we could live with that. We didn't let vocabulary get in the way of solidarity. We met all kinds of people. Some women wanted to be up there at the podium. Other people, their hearts started pounding when it was time to go around the room and introduce themselves. At first, I was one of those people. I wasn't used to standing up and speaking up, but a movement needs all kinds of people. So we created roles in our organization for the bold, the shy, everybody in between. We held many practice sessions, and we told people if they were afraid they might throw up at the podium, they should just bring a small wastebasket with them just in case. We learned, we helped one another. Step by step, we gained confidence, we changed. And that's me at the podium there. It wasn't long before we called our first public meeting and our organization took off. We took over National Secretaries Week, the last week in April, which had been designated as a time for bosses to present their secretary with a box of chocolate or a bouquet of roses in thanks for a year of hard work. But we wanted our rights 365 days a year. So we announced we were holding a bad boss contest, and we invited office workers to nominate their bosses, and entries poured in, unbelievable stories. The TV cameras rolled as we confronted the boss who had asked his secretary to sew up a hole in his pants while he was wearing them, and the lawyer who fired his secretary for bringing him a corned beef sandwich on white bread instead of rye. We called out the boss who handed his secretary a suspicious package saying, "This might be a letter bomb." And you know his next words, right? "You open it." The expression sexual harassment hadn't yet been coined, but that didn't mean it wasn't happening. We believed that the more women joined together for dignity and equality at the workplace, the less sexual harassment would take place. And we helped pave the way for the Me Too movement. Basically, we perfected the art of raising a ruckus. You couldn't avoid us. And the world began to change. Countless bosses began getting their own coffee. We heard about a group of women in a tiny insurance company who drew up a list of demands, including a raise, and they started circulating a petition. And after 3 days, their boss caught them at it, and he held up the petition and got everybody's attention. And he said, "Do you know what we do with these things? They go straight in the trash." Plunk. 3 days later, all their demands were met. Soon, we were taking on the biggest and the baddest corporate titans and driving them mad. We announced that we were targeting the biggest insurance company in town, the John Hancock, with a list of demands. And that night, one particular executive decided he better spend all night in his office, just in case. Just in case what? I don't know. In case we invaded, I suppose. We did not invade, but it wasn't long before the company issued a huge raise. And for the first time ever, they donated $100,000 to employee childcare. And across the city, we began winning millions of dollars in back pay and raises. I can't tell you how exciting it was. Actually, my book does tell you how exciting it was. It was really exciting. Women all over the country had the same problems and the same dreams. So we formed a national association with members in every state and chapters in dozens of cities. We made a point of targeting cities with diverse workforces in order to build a multiracial organization: Baltimore, Cleveland, Atlanta. We placed a priority on building a diverse membership, leadership, and staff that would reflect the makeup of the clerical workforce itself. And that's something that didn't just happen. It took conscious work, and it's something I'm very proud of. Jane Fonda knew one of us from the anti-war movement, and she came to us and said she wanted to make a film about the concerns of office workers. Needless to say, we were thrilled. And she brought her team to meet with our members, and they posed a question we had never thought to ask in all those recruitment lunches, which was, have you ever fantasized about doing in your boss? There was a moment of stunned silence, and then the room just exploded because it turned out everybody had, and all those fantasies went right into the script. The movie 9 to 5 was a comedy, but it told some important truths. In the movie, 3 women get together, and it becomes necessary for them to kidnap their boss, who the New York Times film critic describes as a fine lunatic villain, a mini-brained tomcat. Once he's gone, no one really notices. The 3 women institute a slew of new worker-friendly policies, everything we were asking for. And come to find out, the company runs better than it ever did. The movie was a huge box office success in 1980. Women had never seen ourselves as the main characters, women office workers on the big screen, and the atmosphere in the theaters was electric. There's one scene where Jane Fonda is ushered into a room with a huge photocopy machine, and she's told, "Okay, do your thing." She presses a button, and these papers start flying out of different orifices, and she's really doesn't know what to do. Her lip starts trembling, and women would stand up in the theater and shout, "Push the stop button." Dolly Parton's toe-tapping song said it all. And as Amy said, the song has become an enduring anthem. So it was our movement that inspired the movie. And the movie, in turn, gave our movement a huge boost. After the movie came out, we had won the debate. Now it was time to consolidate our power. And that meant starting a union, because only through a union contract do you get it in writing, guaranteed. Workers in unions earn higher pay, they have better benefits, a say over working conditions. And in 1981, the Service Employees International Union, SEIU, granted us a nationwide charter, and our woman-led union, District 925, got off the ground all over the country. And not just SEIU, but many other unions started investing new resources in organizing women workers. And they discovered that union drives in woman-dominated workplaces, especially those with a high percentage of Black women, were more likely to succeed. And that was a surprise to those who early on had told us, forget it, women couldn't be organized. They could be, and they were. Now, just like every union in the 1980s and beyond, we encountered ferocious opposition. And in response, we were forced to come up with some clever tactics of our own. At the University of Washington in Seattle, what turned out to work was making Tampax machines a major issue at the bargaining table. Yes, we did want more Tampax machines at the work site, but the real reason we kept talking about Tampax was that every time we used the word Tampax, the management negotiators got so flustered that some of them had to leave the room, and we won a great contract. So what has changed and what remains to be done? Issues that used to be considered individual matters are now matters of policy, corporate policy, government policy, union policy. Pregnancy discrimination is illegal today. Sexual harassment is illegal. We have the Family and Medical Leave Act. We don't have help wanted male and help wanted female ads in the newspapers anymore. Managerial jobs are now increasingly open to college-educated women. But as we know, it can be harder to be a worker today than it was 50 years ago. Low-paying dead-end jobs are still with us, and women and people of color are still most likely to remain stuck in those jobs. Some people are working 2 and 3 jobs just to put food on the table. The gender gap in pay is stuck at 82% and much worse for women of color. The good news is that a new wave of labor organizing and labor consciousness is in full swing. Support for unions, for workers organizing, is at its highest level in 2 generations. 71% of Americans now support unions. 88% of young people support unions. We're hearing new voices, seeing new tactics, the barbecues run by the Amazon workers, the sip-ins at Starbucks. The National Domestic Workers Alliance is organizing. 9 to 5 is still reaching out to women in every state. And these are the people who are forging today's links in the chain of working women's activism. And these are the people who give me hope for the future. So in conclusion, while I was doing the research for my book, I opened a box of old papers and I found this little quote that I had clipped out of a magazine. And it said this: "Through our great good fortune, in our youth, we were touched with fire." And that's what it was like for me and for so many of us in the working women's movement. So I want to end by quoting from an old labor song that I love. And it says this: "Freedom, freedom is a hard-won thing. You've got to work for it, fight for it, day and night for it, and every generation's got to win it again." So let me stop sharing the screen. And now I'd like to pose some questions for you to address in your breakout groups. And here they are. Have things changed for the better for women workers since the early 70s in your experience? How yes and how no? And what remains to be done? Have you ever joined together with others at the workplace to make change? Why or why not? What are the advantages and disadvantages of working alone or with others? What helps people join together, join a group effort, speak up at a meeting? So those are the questions for you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Amy. So thanks so much.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Ellen. If only I had 10 minutes to ask you a bunch of questions, but wow, so inspiring. We're going to give everybody up to 20 minutes, more or less, give or take, to answer as many of these questions as you want to answer. If you want to focus on one, that's fine. If you want to try to tackle all three, that's fine too. I will let the team do their magic. We'll bring you back together and do some light sharing of what came up for you, and I look forward to hearing how it goes. So team, take it away. Send you off to Zoom land. And for YouTube participants, if you want to post your answers in YouTube, in the chat, that would be great too.